Welcome back to our weekly fireside chats here at QuestionPro. I will admit it hasn't been weekly for the last few weeks. We've taken a little bit of a spring break. There's been so many bank holidays in the month of May, one of them being the King's coronation, which we're actually going to be talking about today, and looking at some qualitative sentiment data around the King's coronation, and how AI really helps researchers to do that. We've got Daniel here, our lead researcher here in the UK, that's been playing around with some new beta technology coming out from QuestionPro called Discover, which really uses AI to help with sentiment analysis, analyzing open-ended questions, which I know for a lot of researchers out there can be a burden. So we're going to dive into it with Daniel today. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Asim. Thank you. Good to be back.
So you've been playing around with some new technology. I've been gone over the last 2 weeks, helping with our Japan office get things off the ground, and you've been using that time to play around with some of our newest tech. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So as always, QuestionPro, we're trying to get ahead of the curve here with the technology for surveys. And so, I mean, and generally the general conversation around AI is still buzzing, and I hardly know any researcher that is not playing around with all the tools out there. It's pretty exciting, I must say. Yeah.
It is. I mean, it feels like we're moving at breakneck pace, right? Like if we're not doing the work to keep ourselves up, it almost feels like we're going to get left behind, both as the user and the creator of the technology. But I know QuestionPro in general has been really ahead of the curve on this one. We've gotten our QX bot to build surveys automatically. So you can actually just come in and say, hey, I want a survey about this topic, and it'll write one for you. We've got our AI technology for plagiarism detection. So when people kind of write into open-ended questions, we can detect now if they're using AI and bots to do that. But this is kind of our next stage of using AI, which is really to help understand what's coming back through all of these open-ended questions, right? I mean, I think this is something that you've faced in before, and we see so many of our customers and our clients. The challenge is like, okay, I put an open-ended in my questionnaire. Now I've gotten 1,000 responses. Who's reading through 1,000 of those open-ended comments to come back and do the analysis? Well, now we've got AI's help for that.
Yeah, I mean that is the challenge with analyzing open-ended questions. So everybody wants them. You want to ask follow-up questions to understand why people have answered a certain way. But then you've got the problem at the end of the day of analyzing everything. And the main problem with that is the volume, right? So usually you've got a ton of responses coming in, and you've got to analyze all that. And it takes just so much time to go everything. Like nobody wants to sit there. Depending on the survey, it could be interesting, and you could spend your time sitting there and reading everything. But if speed is of essence here, then you've not got all the time to read through all that, and then you just got to find a way of analyzing all that. I think mostly people fall to word clouds, which is cool, but not necessarily too insightful. Recently, one of our clients asked me for a word cloud, and I'm like, well, I've tried to generate a word cloud, but it's not that insightful. But I said, well, I need it anyway. So yeah, and sometimes you just really need somebody that really understands the industry to be able to really make sense of the open-ended. And these are some challenges of analyzing open ends, and which is why having an AI tool, leveraging an AI tool to help with that is really super helpful.
Yeah, it's interesting. It almost feels like this is why we have such a big divide in the research industry between qualitative researchers and quantitative researchers, right? It's like, in theory, you would almost think that, like, okay, you're putting out a survey and you're going to get a few hundred respondents to it, maybe 1,000, 2,000 respondents, whatever statistically significant. That survey is there for a quant reason. But it's almost like, why wouldn't you ask a few open-endeds in there, right? And get some of that qualitative data back. And I think this is the problem, right? It's like, well, if I put in the open end, somebody's got to go through and read through all of that and make sense of it, right? And that's where the quant researchers are like, I don't really want to do that. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to make sense of it. Or it's just not in my wheelhouse, right? And then people start to kind of get religious about it. No, we need, quantitative, statistically significant data. I've got to be able to run this T analysis on it, and I've got to make sure I can cross tab everything, and this is what my reporting is based on. And then you've got the qualitative researchers in this camp that are like, no, I'm going to sit through an hour-long focus group and take the right notes and make sure that my way of analysis is really through text, right? That's really what I'm spending my time doing. I'm not going into SPSS. I'm not running these data tables. That's not for me, right? My home is in the words. And this almost kind of brings it together and kind of will help, I think, both sides hopefully come together a little bit more, and maybe encourage some quant researchers to use more open-ended questions in their surveys.
Yeah, and I think this makes it really easy and useful to do mixed methods, because then people who are really good at doing quant have got like an easy to use fast tool to add some qual to. So I did a study recently, and I didn't find something that was statistically significant. I mean, researchers like statistical significance, right? And for most people, when they don't find statistical significance, they lose interest. I was trying to explain why that should not be, right? And open ends in this case, in this example that I'm referring to, came in really handy by reading the open ends. Although the numbers were not significantly different, but the comments really helped to provide an insight into which way the business decision should lean. So yeah, I think this is really helpful to support a mixed methods research as well.
It adds so much color to the data, right? That
Right.
Even if you can get, let's say that out of 1,000 text responses that you get back, that 90, I think this is the other challenge, right? Like 90% of them actually aren't saying anything useful, right? They're one lines, or there's somebody trying to just write something really quickly in there. And then the quant researchers are able to kind of say, yeah, it's not worth it, right? It's not worth going through 1,000 responses just to kind of find, maybe 10, 20, 30 that are actually going to be helpful. But if the AI can do that, right, and help point you to, hey, these are the 30 responses that really matter that you should read, that might help explain what's coming out of the quant data. Now you can add this color, right? You've got all of these things to lean on to help you understand what is actually the quantitative data telling you.
Yeah, and the speed. I mean, there are some tools out there already. Some of them are super expensive. Like usually people use NVivo or Atlas TI software. These are really expensive softwares to use for qual analysis, and we have it as a tool in QuestionPro just for free to use. And so usually what these softwares will do either supervised or unsupervised analysis, and it's not. And that's why people specialize in this. It takes some skill to do this. But really, what we are offering now is a really fast and easy way to get in the insights from the open ends without needing too much expertise. I mean, it takes it right from text. You get the quantitative aspect of it, and then it's just super fast, and which is great.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Daniel, I want to go back to something you said, mixed methods, just define that for us a little bit. What is a mixed method study?
Yeah, so simply you spoke about quant and qual, which are these two camps, and the battle goes on. So mixed methods is just a research methodology that has a mixture of qual, and quant. So the way this works is usually you would have all your typical screeners, and then you have all your questions with the scales 1 to 5, 1 to 7, or whatever, which you would find some mean scores and then do some cross tabs based on that. So all that stuff is quantitative, but usually you want to find out why people have made specific choices. So if I ask a question, okay, which of these two storyboards or these two options is the easiest to understand, and then someone chooses the third or the fourth option, you would like to find out why. So without a qual or follow-up questions, which I usually use our dynamic comments tool to ask for, it's just you just have the response and you just know why the respondent chose that. So adding that qual element gives you an insight into actually why the respondent made that choice. And like I said in the
Yeah.
example before, it can be really super helpful to understand even the quant data more.
I mean, it's interesting. Like, do you see a future where we even use the word mixed methods, or is every quant study going to have some component of an open-ended question? Doesn't it just make sense? I mean, if you're going to be putting a survey out there, doesn't it make sense to have at least one, two? You never know what color can come back from that, right? Doesn't it almost make sense that every study in the future, if you can analyze it easily, should be a mixed method type of study?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good question, but I think it's a question because most of us, I think, we are already leaning, we are biased towards the quantitative side, which is why we're talking of mixed methods. But it's just that some research questions or some research objectives lend themselves best to a quantitative method, and some just lean towards best towards qual. So I think the issue of qual or quant is really a matter of what is the dominant aspect of the study. Because
Yeah.
apart from that, really, we should say that every study really it's a mixed method. Because even if you were doing a
Yeah.
purely qual study, like this study that I'm going to be showing, you still want to take some numbers behind it, because you can
Yeah. Exactly.
you can still segment the qual to find out what men or women are saying differently, or what what the age groups are saying. So you can still drill down the sentiments into the segments that you have in the study. So it just moves from a qual, purely qual, to a bit of a quant to make the presentation make sense. So really, it's a good question. That is it. It is a mixed method always, but I
Right.
think the characterization is based on which method is dominant in the study.
Correct. Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, I mean that's a good point, right? Even in qual, it's like we're still using numbers and analysis, right? I mean, even if it's a focus group with 10 people and
Yeah,
hey, everybody seemed to like the flavor that was sweeter. Well, the question is still how many of the 10,
yeah,
said that they liked the sweeter option versus the maybe the more salty option. So there's always some level of mixed methods. And I think with technology, these things are just kind of coming together in many ways, right? That almost every study will be some level of a blend, and it just comes down to what's the more dominant kind of
yeah,
vector approach that you're taking at the end of the day.
yeah, yeah.
In some ways, I think some people would even define like a survey that's open ended. Well, if you're doing it on an online survey and you're kind of getting people to fill in text boxes, to some sample that's maybe over 50 people, then it's still kind of quant at the end of the day, right? I mean, you're still in
Mhm.
your analysis. You're going to be talking about, okay, what percentage were this sentiment, that sentiment,
Exactly.
what percentage of people said this type of thing. You go in and you kind of categorize each of the open endeds, and then what comes out of it? Okay, a graph that says, X percentage of the open ended said this type of thing, and X percentage says
That's
that
right.
type of thing. So we're always kind of in the mixed method world anyway.
Yeah, yeah. There are some that
Makes
are
sense.
more ideological, and you're just trying to find patterns of things, and so you just come up with some um, themes and graphs and frameworks and stuff like that. Those may not need numbers, and that is the extreme end of qual.
Right.
But for most market research cases, you would definitely need a blend of the two. That's right.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, let's kind of dive into the actual survey that you ran here, Daniel. I think it'd be great to show folks what the analysis looked like, how the AI is kind of coming in. I will kind of just say that this is a beta product. It's brand new. We're kind of still working with the algorithms, but it's also free. So it's available in all of the licenses today. You will be able to kind of see where you can access this functionality. And we'll show you kind of a sneak peek of what it looks like. And obviously, feel free to kind of ask questions along the way as Daniel shows the survey. But Daniel, this study was all about kind of the monarchy, right? Something that people tend to have strong feelings about, subjective feelings about, something that's probably pretty good for a qual kind of first type of study to really understand how people feel about the monarchy, a timely topic here. So tell us a little bit about what you learned and show us how the new Discover functionality worked for you.
Yeah, so we thought this would be a fun study to do, just to showcase discover the capabilities there. Definitely an interesting topic. I will just share my screen. and I will walk you through the survey itself and what we did.
Cool. Looks like you might just need to pop over to the next tab. There we go.
Okay, good. So just a quick run through the survey itself. So like I said, we have some gender questions. We have our capture there to make sure we are catching bots. And then we had 10 open-ended questions that we just randomize them and ask each 5 questions out of the 10 for each respondent. We just filtered it to 300 responses in the UK, the general population here. No quotas here, just the general population. So this is how it looks. Very simple, all open-ended text, no quant apart from the age question at the very top. And then we dive right into the question. So we're asking questions on what people think the monarchy's role is in modern UK. We asked about how they would describe the overall sentiment towards the coronation that we all just witnessed last month. We asked about whether people believe that the coronation and the monarchy's tradition have a positive or negative impact on the country. How useful is it to the country in general? And questions like that: how do you think the recent coronation has influenced public perceptions of the monarchy? Did it do any good in changing people's perception in the UK? So typical questions like that. So I'll now dive into the analytics.
And Daniel, just
Here.
before we go to the analytics, I think the structure of this is somewhat interesting, right? Because, in a focus group, you can kind of ask a lot of these questions in different ways, right? And kind of keep the conversation going. Obviously, this is a little bit still more kind of online qual, right? I mean, somebody is going to get tired and really won't fill out the survey if you're putting 20 of these open-ended questions in front of them, almost asking the same question in a slightly different way. But now you're being smart about it, right? So it's almost this like focus group light where, hey, we're randomizing which questions you see. The respondent is only maybe filling out 4 or 5 of these, but now you as to do the analysis, you're able to get a bunch of different perspectives, right? And it looks like you ran about 100 respondents through this. So just to give an idea for the audience, right? You're able to get that amount of data back in just a few days versus going and setting up a whole focus group and going through the expense of recruiting and kind of bringing people on live. There's obviously still a need for a focus group, but this is like a really nice light way to start to get what you might get out of a focus group if you're purely just focused on the qual and kind of the open-ended nature.
Yeah, really, you could call this like an automated focus group. Yeah. So our very lovely, nice block flow came in handy here. I will just showcase it. It's really open, nice and clean. So just create a block, put all the blocks in there, ask it to randomly show 5 out of the 10 and evenly present all. As simple, easy, and intuitive as that, and it works seamlessly well. Yeah. Okay. So now let's pop back to the analytics part and then show the analysis. So we've got a bunch of tools here. Of course, we've got all our quant analysis here, loads of them. I think we need several fireside chat to go through all of them. So hopefully we'll get there. And we've got a suite of text analysis tools here where we can first generate just a general text report. We can search it. We can do word clouds, very popular. We can do a text analysis. So here we do a text tagging where this is really the standard way most people do qual analysis, reading through the text, tagging them for themes and topics, and organizing them in the form of a hierarchy. This is what typically people will use in Vivo and the Atlas TI for. We can do sentiment analysis, and this is our newest Discover. So I'll click in Discover, and we have some responses here. I'll just check these ones off for now. And so once we land here, we have this new. The first thing you notice is that we can actually set the industry. So if we were, for example, an airline industry running some form of customer satisfaction and collecting open ends, This we've set it up such that you can actually set the industry, and then it helps the AI to be able to focus on the industry, understand the registers that are used in that industry, and better be able to aggregate or categorize the sentiments in the data. So this is super cool that we could use. I have not set it this one because this is kind of a general public opinion survey or focus group, automated focus group that we run. So the next thing is to pop. We have the source, so we have all the questions that we asked, 10 of them here, nicely outlined, and we can click on each of them, and then we immediately get a nice um, visualization of all that has been done in the background. So essentially, what Discover is doing is going through all the text responses, question by question, and um, grouping them into topics and themes and analyzing the sentiment. So we have three words here. We have topics, which I will show. You can see the sentiment score by topic here. And we have the sentiment itself, whether positive, negative, or neutral. And we have the topics, the themes. So topics are overall categorization of a group of themes. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's just see what the tool has done here on the question. What are your thoughts on the monarchy's role and relevance in modern day United Kingdom society, considering the recent coronation? Right. So this is off the back of the coronation, and the first thing we see here is that there is a split in sentiment, which, listening to the news and reading the papers and everything, I think is a pretty accurate um, general view of what the sentiments are towards the monarchy. I mean, of course, we had lots of people that were really not happy with it, and we still had a lot of people that were happy with it as well. So it's a 50-50 split sentiment. So the overall sentiment is neutral. We have it displayed here in the corner in yellow. So the sentiment score here is 3, and we had 52 people responding to that question. Yep.
You got it. Makes sense. Almost split perfectly down the middle. It's really interesting. I mean, I definitely would feel that way if you kind of pick random people on the street and ask them about their sentiments towards the monarchy. Obviously, probably differs in terms of which region you're in, what age group you're talking to. But it sounds like we can even kind of dive into that level as well, right? And start to see like what different segments think, what their sentiment scores are. So at the top end, it's 50-50, but then you can start to kind of dive in and see, all right, well, what segments really lean more heavily on the negative side or on the positive side?
Yeah. So we have these two filters, if you want to call them here. So we have the segment filter, where you can actually just filter and see responses from a particular category or segment that you like to see. And we have the breakdown, which is like a follow-on filter. So here, which is right what you said, once you click through, so we had like 4 age groups here, and you apply, it kind of takes the overall sentiment and breaks them down by the categories that we've just selected. And this is where it gets
Wow.
really interesting. So although the overall sentiment is 50-50 split, you could see that the the younger you are, the more likely you are to have more negative sentiment towards the monarchy, which is really true. So we can see that for much younger people, we had no responses for 70-year-olds, but for the youngest group here, in response to this question, 18 to 34, it's completely negative, 100% negative responses. Then the next age group down, you have more positive responses, and then the last group, you have even more, which is really right. I think it reflects the sentiment out there. If you watch the news during the coronation, that the older generation still feel excited and are happy about the monarchy, because they can relate to it more. They probably seen it in its best days, when it was more relevant and more useful, and played its role in keeping British culture and values. So I think this is a
Very
pretty
interesting.
really accurate. Yeah. And
That's so cool. And you can just start to turn on these different filters and then see the data. Are you able to kind of drill in and see what the actual comments are?
yeah, so both at the top and in the breakdown, you can still click and then see more what of the verbatimoms are. So if we click these 7 negative responses, we have a dialog that opens to show us exactly what the negative responses are. Um, Someone doesn't have an opinion, someone who think they really don't have much relevance to younger people. But it's, of course, this one says, I do like the royal family and I'm interested in following them, but I do think that the amount spent on taxpayers' money on the funeral and the coronation
Mm-hmm.
was ridiculous during a cost of living crisis. So this sentiment has both some positive aspect and some negative aspect in one statement. So what Discover does is that when you click the negative sentiment, it only highlights that within the statement. And then if you go to the positive side, then it will show the positive part of that statement as well.
Got it.
So
Got it. So you
someone who says
can.
some really strong negatives here, get rid, force them to get rid. So it gets interesting.
Exactly. And this is, I mean, this is, I think, where a lot of the time saving comes in, right? Because if you think about it, you had 300 respondents, 10 open ended questions. Each of them would have filled out 5. So in theory, that's 300 times 5 of these text responses that somebody would have had to read. Right. So that's what? So 1,500 times that you'd have to go through and read comments and tag them and
Yeah,
those types of things. Now it's all done for you. And the ability to kind of build out these visualizations, now it just lets you drill down to find the most interesting ones to actually explain the data, right? So when we look at this and say, well, why do young people feel so negatively towards the monarchy, right? We don't totally have the why, but now we're able to see, okay, a lot of this actually comes down to money, right?
yeah,
Hey, strip them of their assets. Like I like the family, but like the amount that gets spent in taxpayers' money, cost of living crisis, and so clearly young people are thinking about, well, it's not worth it, right? It's all about the money, right, to them, and it's like, what's going to happen when I grow older? Where's that tax revenue going? And so maybe if you're the monarchy, the monarchy or the royal family, maybe you look at this and say, okay, how can we tell the story about maybe how much more money we actually bring in terms of tax dollars, or why this isn't such a drain on the economy? How do we put it into terms that younger people would actually understand? And now, just like that, right? I mean, it's been maybe 5-10 minutes that we've been looking at this data, and we can already start to pull out these super actionable themes versus kind
that's
of
right.
having to go through and read all 1,500 responses one by one by one.
Yeah, interesting. And just when you were thinking, I was thinking, if someone from the royal family had probably done this survey, I don't know if they do such things at all. But if someone was that interested to run such things, then this is where we come in here clearly. So we have this sentiment score by topic, where so again, I think it's important to note that usually when you were doing analyzing text responses, it's very explorative, right? And iterative. So you go through, you have themes, you combine some of them, you split some of them as you keep going along, right? So Discover kind of gives you a huge head start to the whole thing by leveraging AI to kind of gather the topics that are in there and then group them into gather the themes and then group them into topics. And as you get this, you can modify them or as you go. If I just drill down into culture or society here, so we can still see the comment here. And again, I can kind of turn off all these other ones and then just show this one. So we can see that there is more talk about community and age and loyalty for this group. And for the other group, we have more things about the society, the community, tourist attraction, the places, sales, and loyalty. So this is talking about, so it's just giving it sales, but it's actually talking about it as an institution, right?
Mm.
So yeah, representing the country, keeping tradition, and doing charity work. So here is just both a combination of the negative and the positives in terms of topic. So the topics have
That makes sense.
positive and negative. So a topic, we have negative responses in that topic and positive responses on that topic, as you usually have in any discussion. Then when you come down further, that's when you begin to see all the positive and negative ones put together. So I'll come down here. So if you take each topic, you can see there are about 22 negative and 77 positive responses, which is really, really good as well. So taking the overall 50-50, going down to age group, and then drilling down further to the topics and see how are the sentiments on each topic, right? So for culture and society or tradition, we have more positive. So it looks like the perception of the monarchy in terms of their value they bring to British culture, to the society, and maintaining tradition is really great. Which of course it's actually, we know this by listening to the news, so this is really pretty accurate. And where the most negative sentiment is around whether they are it's useful for the community. The fact that they are tourist attraction and they generate money is a great thing. And places and country, let's drill down to what people say in here. For example, this one, I'm not sure what is there, but I can go back up and find out. Place on the country, yeah, purely ceremonial and representing the UK. Yeah, we could tell that. So this is really great. I find it the speed at which all this happened. They say the responses itself took about a day or two, and within a day as well, we had all this done. Can drill down as much as we want, and it's really great.
Amazing. So it takes a little bit of time to kind of go through and process, but then you're seeing how much time this can save you on the back end, right? You know, Obviously we looked at some of the negative responses for the young people. So then you kind of say, well, what are people saying that's positive? And just clearly right there in the topics, you could see, hey, you know, we need a role model, right? The tradition is important, right? That, hey, you know, actually it's helping to drive tourism. And we didn't even go in and start to look at some of these, right? But in just a small amount of time, the system is basically directing you to what are the text, what's the text that actually matters that you should be spending some time reading that might explain some of the data. And Ismail has a great question here. You know, this particular tool, Discover, is really about the open-ended kind of text-based unstructured data. But we do have other product plans in the roadmap to also look at the quantitative side, so that AI can kind of look at, automatically run your crosstabs, automatically understand, okay, where could there be statistical significance, and kind of pull out some of those highlights. But in this particular case, we're talking mainly about the unstructured, open-ended survey questions, really where I think a lot of researchers have a pain point, right? There's already a lot of kind of things to help with quantitative analysis. But I think for a lot of researchers, the open ends, it just comes down to, well, I got to read a bunch of pieces of text. And this really helps to streamline that, point you in the right direction, give you good visualizations, and get this done quickly so that you don't have to kind of go through the effort 2-3 months of putting together a focus group. Okay, now you've got some things that you can work with, right? And this might further develop your actual quant portion of the study. Right now, we've got some things that maybe will help inform what we should actually be asking on a truly quantitative survey, right? That, okay, clearly there's this money issue. We need to make sure that we're segmenting by age. This tells me maybe we want to even break those age segments into smaller groups, that we probably want to look at regional differences around the UK. We may even want to ask, you know, questions around race or ethnicity to see how those topics come back. But until we looked at some of the open ends, we wouldn't necessarily know, okay, how do people kind of change their sentiment? What are the main topics that people are talking about that we should maybe ask further in a quantitative survey? And this basically kind of lines us up to almost even have a better quantitative survey once you've had a quick look at some of the open ends and some of the directional data.
Yeah, exactly. That is one of the real useful ways to use qual studies to inform quant studies. Yeah.
Well, Daniel, this has been absolutely fantastic. I know we're already 5 minutes over, and I think this is just how it goes when we play around with new AI tech. You just keep on drilling in. What else can it do? What else can it do? But do, let us know if anybody's got questions out there. Feel free to continue to put those in the comments. We'll look at those after the show as well. We'll have the recording here. And you are always free to head over to QuestionPro.com, sign up for an account. I believe that this is even available in the free versions at the moment because it is in beta. So give it a try, play around with it. I'm excited to see what people can do with more and more open ends and kind of mixing quant with this hybrid methodology. I do think it almost makes sense in this kind of new world to always be asking one open-ended question. Ask the why question. You never know what you're going to get back. It can really inform the future research.
Cool.
Amazing. Thanks again, Daniel. Appreciate you showing us the latest and greatest. And thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be back next week with another show.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.